Welcome, everyone, to Working People, a podcast about the lives, jobs, dreams, and struggles of the working class today. Working People is a proud member of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and is brought to you in partnership with In These Times magazine and the Real News Network. This show is produced by Jules Taylor and made possible by the support of listeners like you. My name is Maximilian Alvarez, and today we are diving back into a new sacrifice zone investigation that we began 2 weeks ago. And we're returning to the small rural town of Granbury, Texas, which is about an hour southwest of Fort Worth. In the first episode that we did on this, I spoke with Danny Lakey, Karen Pearson, and Karen's parents, Nick and Virginia Browning, 4 residents of Granbury who all live near the site of a giant 300 megawatt Bitcoin mining operation. I mean, Danny, Nick, and Virginia literally live right across the street from that thing. And the Bitcoin mine itself, which is owned by Marathon Digital, a Florida-based cryptocurrency company, uses a mix of liquid immersion and industrial fans to prevent the over 20,000 computers there from overheating on a daily basis. And many residents say that it's the constant sound from those fans that has made life increasingly unbearable in their town, that they are developing negative health effects like hypertension, heart palpitations, tinnitus, migraines, and more. And they say that their concerns are going ignored by the company and government officials. And, speaking of government officials, let's not forget that Republican Texas Senator Ted Cruz said in 2021, quote, "I would like to see Texas become the center of the universe for Bitcoin and crypto," end quote. And it was Republican Governor Greg Abbott who said in 2024 that Texas, quote, "wears the crown as the Bitcoin mining capital of the world," end quote. But in small towns like Granbury, residents are the ones paying the price for Texas's crypto boom. In today's episode, we dive deeper into the reality of living next door to crypto mining data centers like the one in Granbury, Texas, and the unseen but not unheard threats that they pose to human and non-human life, and what residents in Granbury are doing to fight back. I was extremely grateful to get a chance to sit down and talk with Cheryl Shadden, a registered nurse anesthetist and resident of Granbury who lives right next to the site of the Marathon Bitcoin mining operation, Dr. Shannon Wolf, precinct chair in Hood County, who lives about 3 miles from the Bitcoin mine, and Nanette Samuelson, County Commissioner for Precinct 2 in Hood County. Here's our conversation recorded on April 27th, 2025. Well, Cheryl, Dr. Wolf, Nanette, thank you all so much for joining us today. And as I told your neighbors in our last episode, it's really great to connect with you, but I really, truly wish we were connecting under less horrifying circumstances. But I'm really grateful to y'all for joining us today to help us and our listeners understand this situation on a deeper level and to show how it's not even just the Marathon Bitcoin mine that we're talking about here. So we've got a lot to dig into here. And, Cheryl, I wanted to start by asking if we could first get just a little introduction to you. You live right across the street from this Bitcoin mine, like the folks we talked to in the last episode. So could you tell us just a little more about yourself, where you live, what you do, and how your life has changed since this Bitcoin mining operation moved in right next door to you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Max. We really appreciate this opportunity. My name is Cheryl Shadden. I'm a certified registered nurse anesthetist, so I work in healthcare. When I've been here for over 30 years. My home was here long before a crypto mine came in, long before the power plants that they're plugged into came in. So I'm living out here in the country with my horses and my dogs, and I just want a peaceful life. I want to be able to do my job, take care of patients, have my horses, ride them around, and have a peaceful country life. In the fall of 23, I hear all of this noise. This isn't just a little bit of the power plant noise. This is like standing on the edge of Niagara Falls. This is like sleeping with a vacuum cleaner. This is like laying on a flight deck where jets are taking off, but the jets don't take off. They stay there and they keep running. And so when we first started hearing this noise, we thought, well, they're just building onto the power plant here. That's what all of this humming is. And it was just a slight hum in the background, and then the hum got worse and worse and worse. It felt like an alien invasion. None of us in this area knew what a crypto mine is. Nobody knew what a data center was. Nobody had any idea. And then as the initial owners sold out to somebody else and then sold out to somebody else, the noise got worse and worse and worse. Finally, by the fall of 23, we didn't know what this was. Now the sound is invading our homes. It's inside of my house with ceiling fans on and TVs on. You can't think, you're motion sick, you're nauseated, you're dizzy, you have a hard time getting out of bed, you feel like you've got a concussion. And so then we realized that this is a crypto mine. Well, we didn't know what that was. So we started looking it up. In the process of all of that, I had family come to visit, and they asked me, their mom, what is this? And I said, well, it's a crypto mine. They're like, why are you living like this? What's going on? How can you live this way? And I thought, well, how can my family come and see me from out of state and be appalled? Why am I not more appalled? Why am I not doing anything about this? So I started calling my commissioner, and I talked to my constable, and I said, what can I do? I don't know what to do. I don't know what this is. What do we do? And so my constable said, you're going to have to get community involvement. If you want anybody to be aware of this, you're going to have to get the community involved. I thought, well, I have no idea how to do that. So I started reaching out on social media, and I was telling everybody, what's going on, and posting videos and asking if everybody was sick or if anybody was ill. Next thing you know, neighbor after neighbor after neighbor in our county and the county south of it is telling me the same things that are going on with me. And some are sicker and some are less sick, and children are sick. And I thought, oh my God, it's not just me. It's so many people in this area. So I started reaching out and collecting health information on everybody. And when this happened in the fall, Commissioner Samuelson said, yes, she'd already started getting complaints about all of this. She was planning on having a town hall in January. And so I thought, well, I don't know how many people in this area are on social media. So I started driving house to house, and knocking on doors and telling people, this is what's going on. We have to do something. We're having a town hall. Please come. I'm Cheryl. I'm standing up. I'm here. We have to do something. Oh, my God. And so then Commissioner Samuelson had a town hall. It was well attended. There was standing room only. And story after story of community member after community member after community member of the horrific things that they're having to live with on a daily basis, wildlife that's gone, dogs that are having seizures, people that can't sleep. One person said he lives near Shannon, and the noise was so bad in his driveway at night, he said it would drop him to his knees. None of us are sleeping. We have sleep disturbances. We can't get rid of this alien invasion in our homes. We didn't know what to do about it. And so it was a pretty heated town hall meeting. We had media there, and we started reaching out. And from connection to connection to connection, I got in touch with Texas Coalition Against Crypto Mining, and they got me in touch with Andrew Chow with Time Magazine. He did the first article we had here and got us some national interest. And people are shocked that, we're living this way. And then with all of the media coming out and doing videos and interviews, it was horrific what we're living through. This is like being a prisoner of war. It's like being tortured with loud sounds and bright lights and being sleep deprived until you crack and you talk. It feels like being a prisoner of war, but I get the feeling that prisoners of war are treated better than we are here. This is not okay.
Well, and Commissioner Samuelson, I'd love to bring you in here and ask, like, what the hell this was all looking like from your side, like both as a resident and elected official. Like,
Yeah.
could you help our audience understand a bit more, like, where this crypto mine came from, like, and I guess what the regulation situation is over there that has allowed such a loud operation to operate so close to residents' homes?
Right. Thank you again for getting us all together. And again, I'm Nanette Samuelson. I'm the commissioner for Precinct 2, which includes the unincorporated area that Shannon, Dr. Wolf, and Cheryl, and all the people that you've mentioned live in, as well as the cryptocurrency data center. So I took office in January of 23 and almost immediately started getting phone calls about what is this noise I'm hearing out here? And, I asked the person, well, tell me more about it. Do you have a decibel meter? What are the decibels? And so we just started collecting information. I started, researching what the noise regulations were in the state of Texas and what we could do about it. And so the state of Texas does not give counties very much regulatory authority at all. If you live in a city, you can have a noise ordinance, you can have zoning for residential or commercial, but in unincorporated parts of the counties in Texas, you have very little. We don't regulate zoning, we don't regulate noise. So all we have is to rely on is what the state calls a noise nuisance, which is 85 decibels or higher. That is industrial level noise. That's not something that someone should be subjected to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without hearing protection. And that's what I tell people that ask about this. I said, it's like putting a leaf blower next to your bed and never turning it off and trying to live with that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People if you go to NASCAR or something loud, you wear hearing protection and you know that in a little while you're going to leave and go home to peace and quiet. These people cannot do that. They are subjected to this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I started looking into it. So back to the history, and Constable Shirley and he bought a what I'd call an industrial grade decibel meter, because there are decibel meters that you can download on your phone with an app, but those aren't necessarily that scientific. So we bought an industrial grade commercial decibel meter and started taking readings all over this area, all the way 6 miles away to right across the street, right next door, Cheryl's house, the neighborhood that's right next door. And we contacted the owners at that time was Generate Capital, and it was operated by US Bitcoin. So we started contacting them. So maybe I should back up and talk to you about how it started, because you asked me that. That was before I took office, but let me go back to that. So as I mentioned, the county does have platting authority, but unless something is infringing on a TxDOT road, not US, but a TxDOT road, or it's in a floodplain, and there's really not anything that the county can do to deny it, as long as they have proper sewage and water. So if you're going to build a housing addition, you have to provide sewage and water. But this isn't a house addition, so as long as they have enough water for the 2 or 3 workers that are there, and sewage for the 2 or 3 workers that are there, and it's not in a floodplain, there was nothing that the county could do to deny it from being built. So that's how it got there. But when it came, I was sitting in court, not a member of the court, but I was there as an audience member. And when they brought that to court, it was just Compute North, which is out of North Dakota, were the original owners. And it was just called a data center. And it was just going to have 9 containers. And then they brought back the second development and it had more containers, but it was still called a data center. the commissioners at the time didn't really know what a data center was or cryptocurrency was. They were just, what they said was they were going to harvest unused power to power a data center, is what they were telling the court. So when I got there, it had already been, well on the way. Actually, Compute North went bankrupt in 2022, I believe, early 2022. And then Generate Capital bought it out of bankruptcy, hired US Bitcoin to operate it and complete the development of it. And they went live in either late 2022 or early 2023, but it wasn't totally built out. But that's when I started getting the complaints. So we started working with US Bitcoin, and they were actually very wanting to be good neighbors. They met with us. They came down here several times. Constable Shirley and I drove them around with our decibel meter and said, look how we're 6 miles away, and look at the readings that we're getting. And they were very open to, whatever it is that we have to do to be good neighbors, we want to do it. They did build a wall, but as Cheryl knows, that wall ended up, it wasn't a wall all the way around. It was a partial wall on the southeast side of the building, of the plant, right next to the neighborhood there. But all it did was cause the sound to ricochet off that wall and head straight to Cheryl's house. So, and it just really amplified it. I called, this is still US Bitcoin. I emailed or called him back and I said, did you get a performance bond on that, or a performance requirement on that wall? Because if whatever they told you it was going to do to the sound, it's not working. You need to get your money back, because I'm getting more complaints now than I did before you built the wall. And so they actually came back out. We drove around again, and then they said, okay, we're committed to getting a new sound study. We're going to do whatever it is we need to do. About 2 weeks later, he emailed me back and said, well, this was December of 23. We just found out we're being put up for sale, so I really can't do anything until I know who the new owners are. So it kind of just drug out until January. The sale closed really kind of coincidentally right before I had that town hall. So the new owners, Marathon, a couple of the people from Marathon actually came to our town hall and listened to heart-wrenching stories from all of these residents about what it's like to live with this noise and the illness that they're going through. I don't know if anyone's brought up from the previous discussions that you had, but the doctor out of Portugal, Dr. Marina Alves, have you heard that name yet?
I've not.
Okay. She is an expert in infrasound, which is sound waves that your ear can't hear, but your body can. Your body is absorbing these sound waves, but your ear cannot detect them. So when you think about the 85 decibels is what your ear can hear. It's not taking any measurement about what your body is absorbing that your ear can't hear. So we started listening to, getting more information from her studies, and, Marathon, after that town hall, pretty much that's really the last conversations that I've had with them. They pretty much went radio silent. They did hire a PR person. They said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to first hire a PR person. Then we're going to put all these containers in dielectric fluid, which should decrease the noise, and 2 or 3 other things. Well, they hired the PR person, and that person has never called me, has never emailed me, has never even tried to get in touch with me. And they had an open house last Good Friday. So that's another story, is they decided to have a town hall in April, and they, last year, they announced it on Wednesday on social media for Friday, which was Good Friday, which didn't give people very much notice. Plus, it's on Good Friday. So we all went because we're not going to miss an opportunity to speak to the folk, the Marathon people. And I met the PR person, and I asked her, I said, I'm the commissioner for precinct 2. I'm kind of surprised that you haven't tried to call me or contact me. And she said, well, no one told me I was supposed to. And she still hasn't since then. My phone number's on the county website. I don't remember for sure, but I'm sure I gave her my card because I always do when I introduce myself. But still nothing. But so that's been kind of the history of what it's happened. And we tried. So one of the things that we did, because the counties don't have regulatory authority, we started working with our 2 legislators, our Senator Birdwell and Shelby Slauson, about getting something changed in the Texas law that would allow us more ability to put sound, noise, regulation, noise, or we wouldn't be called an ordinance because that's what cities do. Counties don't have ordinances in Texas. But some ability to allow our constable or our sheriff's department to do something to monitor this noise level for the people that live there, even if it was like at airports where it's, after 8:00 at night and before 8:00 in the morning, which doesn't help Cheryl that much because she gets up at like 3 in the morning. But something that we could do, and we started last summer. We drafted a resolution at Commissioner's Court. It passed 5-0. I took it down to a hearing at the last summer about the grid, because the other thing that these cryptocurrency, as you probably know, the cryptocurrency data centers are a huge draw on the grid. And so that was what the hearing was about. But I used that opportunity to say, in addition to the draw on the grid, this is what it's doing to people's lives. And I talked about the illnesses, but I said, which I don't know if anybody's mentioned yet, but I said, the people that live around here, their property is not just worth less, it's worthless. They cannot sell their property, even if they wanted to, because nobody wants to live next to this constant noise. So we started working with our legislatures. I was on the phone with other senators, Senator Cole Kirst, who's on the Health and Human Services Committee, Senator Mays Middleton, again, Brian Birdwell. They are just, here we are almost at the end of the legislative session, and nothing has been changed. So all of our efforts to work with the senator and the legislature and our representative, I don't think any bill is going to see the light of day that's going to give us any more ability to help the people that live here live around this cryptocurrency data center. I don't have a good feeling for it at all.
Well, I want to pick up on the Good Friday meeting. As Nanette said, we were all there. And the first thing that happened was they demanded that we all sign in, give our email addresses and our phone numbers. So they were gathering information from all of us. And I refused to sign. And I was telling people, you don't have to do that. And the Marathon folks were saying, oh, yes, you do. And I just walked in without signing, and a couple of other people did. But the other thing they did was they had plants that were standing in line as people were kind of waiting for others to sign in to get into the town hall. So they had planted attorneys and other people that were officials at Marathon were all in line without telling us that that's who they were. I just happened to recognize an attorney that I knew represented Marathon in line. And then they demanded that we sit at tables where one of their representatives was at. And so they were wanting to gain information without telling us that they were trying to gain information from us. They wanted to know what the symptoms were. They wanted us to tell them what exactly our grievances were, but not for the purpose of helping us. It was for the purpose of just gaining information, probably to try to lessen the impact of the community's outcry. That's my belief. From that town hall, they have done nothing. They presented information that could have been pulled, and actually, I think it was pulled right off the internet. It was nothing that was thought out, but they made all these promises. This is what we're doing. We're in the process of doing this, fill in the blank, whatever that was. And I don't think they have done any of that. I might be wrong. Nanette and Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But it did not foster goodwill. It actually made the majority of us highly suspicious of them. And remember, this is a multi-billion-dollar company. And the folks that live out here in this precinct, they are good people, but they are really normal working class kinds of people. So we cannot fight in the court system these kinds of these problems, because they're drowning us in all kinds of paperwork, all kinds of demands, and they refuse to give information, but they demand it from us. It's just a mess out here. But I have walked with Cheryl and Nanette and others that are living out here since January of 23. Is that right, Cheryl? January of 24 was when I first became aware of what was going on out there. And I just remember standing outside. My husband and I drove out there, and I stood across the street, and it gave me an immediate headache. Like my head was just pounding. And I had been out there maybe just a few seconds. I stood outside my car, and my husband was also feeling it. He said that it was like pounding on his chest, he said. And so we ended up leaving. And my thought was, surely if somebody knew about this, they would be able to correct it, whoever this somebody was. And as I talked to people, our constable, Shirley, Nanette, other people, Nanette and I sat down in a meeting with our representative, Shelby Slauson, and I thought, okay, yes, now something's going to happen, and nothing did. Nothing did. And I think for people to understand Texas is really a live and let live kind of a place. We're not going to tell somebody else how to live their lives. We just don't want them to tell us how to live ours. And so people really like to live in rural areas, so that if we want to raise chickens, or if we want to ride horses, or if we want to do whatever we want to do, it's an okay thing, as long as we're not bothering other people. And so I understand why people move into the rural areas. It's a beautiful place out here. I also saw, just skipping a little bit, I also saw an interview, I think it was ABC News, where Marathon said this is a well-established industrial zone, and that is a lie. That is a lie. This is not an industrial zone. This area out here, we've got all kinds of wildlife. We have bald eagles. We have golden eagles. We have endangered species out here. We've got horses and cows and farms and orchards and all kinds of stuff. It is a wonderful place to be out here. And as Cheryl said, they moved in on top of us. This is not an industrial zone, but they're lying to people to justify them being out here. The other thing that I would say that your listeners probably would find interesting, the energy plant that owns the property that Marathon sits on was not running at full capacity when Marathon moved in. Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong. They were running at 2/3 capacity. Is that right?
Correct. 66% capacity.
66% capacity. And when Marathon moved in, all of a sudden they are running at full capacity. And so they are, Constellation Energy has petitioned our state to build a new energy plant out here. So yet again, they are wanting to buy up ranches and other places in order to build more industry that the community does not want. And quite frankly, it's making us sicker.
Cheryl, Nanette, Dr. Wolf, I wanted to ask about, this is something that, like high up politicians, in Texas have been championing for years. I mean, Ted Cruz said in 2021 that he wanted to see Texas become the center of the universe for Bitcoin and crypto. And Governor Abbott said that Texas wears the crown as the Bitcoin mining capital of the world last year. I wanted to ask y'all, when they were saying stuff like that, were regular working folks around the state like you all, did they give you any sense of what that was going to look like? Did they tell you that this is going to be the reality of making Texas the Bitcoin mining capital of the world? Like the things that you and your neighbors are going through? Is that something people want? This isn't like it's a manufacturing operation providing jobs. This is a massive data center, creating massive amounts of noise and using massive amounts of water for something that's harder to grab your hands around than a bigger industrial operation. So I just wanted to ask if you could just say a little bit more from your vantage points about the promise versus the reality of making Texas this crypto capital of the world.
For me personally, living this life and living with this barrage of problems here, I feel like I've been sold out. So I noticed that these crypto mines aren't next door to probably Ted Cruz's home or next door to Governor Abbott's home. And when we started this initial battle, and we're emailing all of the regulatory agencies here in the Texas legislature and state, they're like, well, nobody could help us. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted to listen. And so when you stop and think about it, technically we're subsidizing this. Taxpayers are subsidizing this. The infrastructure that it takes to build electric lines to all of these crypto mines, that's subsidized by taxpayers and by you paying your electric bill. All of our electricity out here has gone up. Now, here in the state of Texas, crypto miners don't have to rate back when we're struggling with excessive heat or excessive cold, or when a hurricane comes up through the Gulf of Mexico. They don't have to regulate back. They don't have to ramp back. But if they do, they buy their electricity on the cheap, bargain basement, bulk pricing, not what I pay, not what Commissioner Samuelson pays or Shannon or anybody in this area. So they buy their electricity on the cheap. Now, if they sell it back to the grid by their own choosing, they don't have to. This mine here is behind the meter, so they can do whatever they want. They sell it back to the grid at inflated prices. And so who takes that in the fanny is me, taxpayers and people that are paying their electric bills, everyday consumers. So we're actually paying the state of Texas to torture us. That's not okay. That's not remotely okay. Come out here, stay the night at my house, sleep in my house, listen to this noise through shut doors and windows, camp out in my backyard. I'd love to have you. Come stay with me and see what it's like. It's not just me, it's everybody in this area. So you can tell us that this is going to be the crypto mine capital mecca of the United States. But the reality is they don't care. This is big business in Texas. So that's all they care about. And reality here, they're taking a third of the power from this 1,200 megawatt power plant, which is Constellation Energy's Wolf Hollow 2. It's a gas steam plant. Constellation doesn't own the other power plant, which is Wolf Hollow 1, which is a gas turbine plant. So now that they're drawing all of this power off of Constellation Energy's Wolf Hollow 2, now they're running at 99.6% capacity. So since this has happened, now we experience valve blows on a regular basis. We had a valve blow that happened last week that went on for 3 days. And it's not just extreme noise, it honest to God makes you feel like you've lost your mind. So everybody in this area has hearing loss. One family had a child that was having seizures. They took a second mortgage and moved out, and so they're struggling. People here have cardiovascular disease. One of my neighbors, the electrical system in his ventricles shorted out. He had to be resuscitated multiple times. Now he's in the hospital right now having had a stroke. So it's not just the noise, it's a damage to our soft tissues, the damage to our blood vessels, like Dr. Alvarez says. There's so much damage here, and Governor Abbott doesn't care. Ted Cruz doesn't care. It's big business in Texas. Who cares if, working class people like me get mowed over? It's not next to their home. And, so the reality is how do we fight that? So we've tried everything. We have a lawsuit with Earth Justice right now. That's an injunctive lawsuit. Some of the people in this area have hired personal attorneys to fight for all of the detriment that's occurred. My property values have decreased. So going through the checklist, I've gone to the Hood County Appraisal District and I'm contesting my property taxes again this year. So my property taxes were dropped 25%, and a previous year they were dropped 25%. You're going, wow, that's great. Your property taxes have dropped 50%. The reality is that's dropping the bucket of my property. I have absolutely no value at all. So people say, go ahead, move. You can move. How can I move? I've been here for 30 years. My home and my property are paid off. Nobody would buy this property. Nobody.
Mm-hmm. And that just, puts an exclamation point on what I told the Senate committee last summer is their property is not just worth less, it's worthless. So one of the things the reason that Senate committee was had a meeting in summer. So in Texas, the legislature only once every 2 years. So they went into session in January of 25, and they're about to be finished unless they call special sessions. They'll be finished at the end of May. But to prepare for the legislative session, they had hearings last summer. And the hearing that this one was regarding was the grid, because the head of the PUC had made a statement last June saying that the demand for electricity in Texas is going to double by 2030 due to data centers and Bitcoin. And so they started trying, having meetings with the legislature to figure out, okay, how do we address this? So yes, you want all this business to come here, but your infrastructure isn't able to do that. Hold on, my husband is joining us. So the Texas legislature started trying to figure out how to address the impact to the grid from the Bitcoin and the data centers. One of the things that the legislature needs to do is, and I hope that some legislation will pass this legislative session that will put some type of, it's called bring your own power kind of thing. But what that's going to do is require battery energy storage systems to be installed with data centers and cryptocurrency, which those bring their own risks. Battery energy storage systems are, at this point in time, lithium-ion batteries. And just like with a Tesla or some other electric vehicle, if they start on fire, they cannot be put out with water. They have to just burn out. And if you have acres and acres and acres of battery energy storage systems with lithium-ion batteries, if a fire starts, it's called a thermal runaway. And it just heats up and heats up. And while it's heating up, it's putting off all kinds of toxins into the air. So as Cheryl said, they're currently drawing from gas-powered power plants energy, but the legislature possibly, if this bill passes, is going to require crypto and data centers to bring their own power, which means battery energy storage systems, or they can have small gas-powered power plants on property. One of the things that is unique, sadly, unique about our little precinct is that we have gas pipelines running through our precinct and we have access to the grid very close together. So that is why these projects are coming to our little part of Hood County, is because of the gas pipelines and the grid. And so they can get the energy and they can dispatch the energy very quickly. I think that when Governor Abbott and Ted Cruz and all of the legislators that are talking about Texas becoming the crypto and the data center capital of this United States, I don't think they realize the impact to people's lives. And if this data center was out surrounded by 500 acres of industrial area or non-residential area, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But that's not what's happening. I mean, Texas enjoys businesses. We are a pro-business state, but not at the expense of people's lives and or their property. And that's what is happening in this little community here.
So here across the street from where I live, if you think about being on the streets, South Baltimore, so Constellation Energy owns this property across the street. They're the slumlord. The drug dealer on the street corner is Marathon Digital. They own all that property there. They're leasing their property to Marathon Digital. Marathon Digital doesn't own the property that they're sitting on. So now you have Marathon Digital causing problems with the community, making us sick, dropped our property values, not allowing us to sleep at night. You have Constellation Energy, who holds the lease, who is leasing this property. They don't care that they have a harmful renter on their property. They don't care. They haven't done anything to mitigate the noise that it's there. Now you have Constellation Energy wanting to put in an 8-turbine gas power plant right in the middle of all of this to cause more problems. So you start looking at all of the air pollution, sulfuric acid, sulfur hexafluoride, ozone, greenhouse gases, and then you have the first power plant here, Wolf Hollow 1, wanting to extend their air permit and drop some more acid rain on us. So this is a huge problem here. This isn't just a little bit of a noise problem. This is a huge industrial pollution problem that's ruining people's lives here.
I would also add to this that regulation usually follows a problem. So regulation is going to have to catch up with what's going on out here. Now, as far as Bitcoin goes, I'm pro-business. As long as they're not hurting people, I don't really care if they have a Bitcoin plant, but they are hurting people. So I'm not angry at Bitcoin itself. It could be any industry that's doing this, and I would have a problem with them. Ted Cruz and Abbott, I'm with Cheryl. I'm frustrated with them. But I also agree with Nanette. I really want to believe that they have no clue the damage that they are encouraging out here. Now, perhaps they are aware. And if that's the truth of that, then I have lost all respect for them. I do think that they need to hear people, because we're not quiet about this. They have to know that something's going on out here. And I think that they need to come out here and talk to us. I think this is a big enough deal that they need to come out here. I want to talk about the valves that are blowing and explain for some of your listeners that may be unaware. And Cheryl, you jump in too, because you understand this really well. Those valves are a safety mechanism that takes a lot of the pollutants, those really dangerous kinds of things, from getting into the air. So when that valve blows, that means that safety measure that is in that particular place is not working. So when a series of valves blow, that means that we are getting contaminants into our air and we're breathing them. Our animals are breathing them. They're in the ground. These things are really important to understand. It's not just the sound. It's what is being released, and we're breathing it, and it's on our skin. And this is dangerous. I also want to talk about.
Can I ask really quick, is that from the cooling operation that's at the Bitcoin mine, or is this from?
This is the power plant.
This is the power plant.
It's the power plant. So as Marathon is demanding more and more power in order for them to do whatever it is that they do, the power plant right next door to it cannot keep up with it. And so it's blowing their valves, which is the safety mechanism that keeps the pollutants from reaching the air and the people around us. So we are having this more and more and more. And now they want to build, Constellation Energy wants to build another bigger power plant. And we're talking about an area that, goodness, I don't even think it's a mile around this. So we're going to have 3 power plants and a Bitcoin mine. And there is talk about moving in another data center within a mile. So I cannot even imagine what this area is going to look like if they are successful.
Dr. Wolf, what is the name of the California battery energy storage system that was on fire?
I looked that up today, and I want to say it was the one out of Monterey, but I don't remember the actual name of it. But I think it was in Monterey, California, the one that caught on fire back in January of this year.
Yes. So
Yes.
get that. Just look up battery energy storage system fire California, and you'll be able to see how the toxins that were in the air, the toxins that were into the soil, the radius of the people that had to evacuate because of that. And that's one thing, as I was saying, is snowballing into the other. The cryptocurrency is pulling, and data centers are pulling so much power from the grid. One of the answers that the Texas legislature may do, or the data centers themselves may do it on their own if their business model says this is cheaper or more cost effective, is to bring those battery energy storage systems on their own property, to let you know how electricity markets work, right? When the demand goes up, the price goes up. Demand goes down, the price goes down. So if I have a business that uses a lot of energy, then one of the things I can do to hedge that is to store my own power in these battery cells. And then when the demand goes up, when Wolf Hollow can make more money selling their energy to the grid than selling it to me, cryptocurrency, Marathon, I can offset that by storing my own power on my own property. And now I can keep running at full capacity because I've stored my own power in batteries. So then we have add on to that the risk of the fires and with the battery energy storage system. So one of the things we're looking into as a county is implementing some national fire safety protocols called NFPA 885 or 855. I'm sorry, I have to look that up to be sure exactly which one it is. But our fire marshal is in the process of working on that because we see this coming next. First, we have, the regulation, really lack of any regulation to do with noise. And now we have really lack of any regulation to do with fighting the dangers of fires or other situations that are caused by the batteries that are going to start being used to store the energy.
Well, and then let's put these battery systems right next to a gas power plant and really make the explosion great.
Right. Talk about dangerous. And then add that we have a volunteer fire department out here, the closest volunteer fire department to the existing BESS system that's out here, battery energy storage system that's already here. The closest volunteer fire department is 14 miles away. Their backup is 23 miles away. So imagine putting one of these right next to a gas-powered electrical system and or energy plant. Imagine what this is going to do to the community. This would be catastrophic. This is inhumane.
Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, there's so many other words that I have for it, but at base, it is inhumane. It's cruel. It is absurd. And the thing that is really just pummeling my heart right now is how often I hear stories like these around the country. Mm-hmm. And like, this should be an exception. This should be like, the kind of thing we write about in history books as a really awful accident that happened one time and we learned our lesson.
Like Aaron Brockovich comes to mind.
Right.
Yeah, it should not be the kind of thing that I'm interviewing people about every week from all over the country, from Red Hill in Hawaii to Cancer Alley in Louisiana to South Baltimore, 20 minutes from where I am, to East Palestine, Ohio, to, Granbury, Texas. Like, this crap is everywhere. And that goes to... I wanted to we only have a few minutes left here with each other, and we're going to have to do more follows because there's so much more to talk about here. But I wanted to sort of in the last 10 minutes that we have here, sort of kind of talk about a few of these like larger connecting points, and we're talking directly to the audience here, right? And to people who may hear this, because I hear the same refrain that y'all have heard all the time. People say, why don't they just move? Like, first and foremost, most people can't do that. Like, how you listening to this, do you have the money to just pick up and move somewhere? Like, what if the house that you live in you couldn't sell? Like the people in East Palestine, not only have their property values plummeted, they don't want to sell them because they can't in good conscience pass off a toxic home to another family. So what are they supposed to do, right? How could Cheryl like pass off her home to someone who's going to have to live across from, you know, this massive power plant and data center? Like, so that's the kind of situation that folks are in. And so in terms of why don't people just move? First of all, it's a real huge burden that most working people can't take on. But if they have to flee and become refugees from their own hometowns to save their lives, like the people we've talked to in Conyers, Georgia, who had to flee the biolab fire in September, that's what they're going to have to do. But also, as we're pointing out here, where are you going to go? Because this stuff is everywhere. And if you're fleeing one sacrifice zone, you may find yourself living next to a toxic landfill. You know, you may find yourself living underneath the side of a mountaintop removal operation. And so when heavy rains come, you're going to be getting flooded like the folks in Asheville, North Carolina we spoke to during Hurricane Helene. So there's almost nowhere to escape to because we've let this stuff, you know, pervade our homes all around this country. But the other thing that I always hear that I wanted to give you all a chance to respond to, but I don't want to make you responsible for it. So I want to really clarify that because it's something that drives me nuts. Admittedly, I am a lefty nut job. I grew up very conservative, and it's been a long road to the socialist, that you see before you. But I don't care about any of that when I go to towns and talk to people who are suffering through things that they did not cause, they did not ask for, whether they're Trump voters, non-voters, Biden voters, anybody. And people on the internet will say, well, they deserved it. They voted for this. Or like they're Republicans, like who cares? Or when the fires in my home of Southern California burn whole neighborhoods, people say, well, they're, Democrats, who cares? Like we got to stop thinking like this, or we're going to keep dying and our communities are going to keep getting destroyed while the rich assholes, pardon my French, who are causing all this pain are getting off scot-free. So that's my little tirade here. I wanted to ask y'all if you just had any thoughts on that or on how to sort of correct the thinking for people listening to this, knowing that, these are the times that we're in. People are going to say stuff like this, and we here are trying to get people to cut through that noise and just care about the fact that flesh and blood, fellow working people, red state, blue state, whatever it is, our people, our neighbors, our fellow workers are hurting, and we are being hurt as well. That is what we should care about. If a car is on fire and someone's inside, you don't go and ask who they voted for before you pull them out, right? So if you guys could just sort of talk to people out there who should be listening to what you're saying but are letting stuff like this get in the way, what would you say to them?
Where is your humanity? If your family is hurt, wouldn't you want me to help take care of them? If you were broken down on the side of the road and you needed a hand, do you care who I vote for when I stop to help you? When I'm doing your anesthesia and we're taking your gallbladder out or your kid's going to emergency surgery, I don't check your voting status before I take care of you. We take care of people because we care. That's who we all are. Now, I don't care if my neighbors are pink with purple polka dots. I don't care who they voted for. My community is suffering. I will do anything that I can to help the people in this area that are suffering. Some of these people can't stand up. They are so sick. And you know what? Step up. Put your money where your mouth is. Step up and be a human.
Yeah, I think for me, it's that you look at another human being and you have compassion for another human being. I don't care where you go to church or if you go to church. You're a human being. And I think that we need to be more mindful. I think the United States used to be like that. Some time ago, we just cared about people. And I think that we need to get back to that place where people are more important than industry. People are more important than your thoughts. People are just important, and we need to stand up for each other, especially those who cannot stand up for themselves.
Yeah, very well said, both of you. There's, I think Cheryl or Dr. Wolf said this early on, is that the peaceful enjoyment of one's property is a right that we have, and that is not happening in this. They are not able to peacefully enjoy their property. And the respect, business needs to respect individuals' rights as well. As both of them said so well, we are humans. We all care about protecting each other and making sure that each other is safe. And when I became the commissioner, I had no idea that this was going to be part of what I was doing. I thought it was, budget and making sure that the county offices are running smoothly and figuring ways to cut taxes and those types of things. And this became front and center right away. And like I said earlier, the stories that people told at that first town hall, what they're dealing with, it's just not right. I mean, industry should not be able to impact people's health and their property without any consequences.
Yep. Agreed.
Again, we're going to have y'all back on, and to our listeners, we are going to continue our investigation into not just the Bitcoin mine in Granbury, Texas, but, looking at the larger surround that, includes other toxic polluters, like that folks are also dealing with. Just like here in South Baltimore, as you guys have heard listening to this show, it's not just the CSX rail terminal that's getting coal dust over everyone's houses and in their lungs. They're also breathing in the toxic pollutants from, the medical waste incinerator and all the other toxic polluters concentrated in that part of the city. So we are going to do more follow-ups on and with folks from Granbury. But with the last minute or two that I have, y'all, I just wanted to do a quick round around the table and ask if y'all could say, in terms of the struggle to hold Marathon accountable and to protect people in Hood County, where do things stand now, and what can folks listening do to help?
For me personally, we thought we were battling, and so we have more and more battles every day. We thought we were fighting one arm of this octopus. No, there's 8 arms on this octopus that we're fighting. Stand up for your next door neighbor, knock on their door, see how they're doing. If you're suffering from problems, your neighbors all are suffering as well. Stand up, take a stand, tell them no. It's a shame you should have to fight for your life, but when I first started this, it was just a few of us standing here. Now I'm standing with a mighty, mighty group of warriors that actually care about one another. And so it's not ideal, no, but now I'm not standing by myself.
Mm-hmm. And Cheryl, did you talk about the incorporation already?
I started off doing that. So one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to incorporate this area, this community into a township so that we can develop statutes and taxation and environmental impact fees. So we're giving this a really good, hard, strong try, trying to get control over our area. We need some control of our lives and what's happening to all the people here.
So what that will do, as I mentioned at the beginning, because cities have regulatory authority, zoning, ordinance authority that counties don't have. So that if they're successful incorporating, they will be able to have ordinances and regulations, zoning, because they will be a municipality inside of the county. So then that will take precedence over the lack of authority or ability that the county, we don't have like I was saying earlier, it's pretty much water, sewer, and that's about it. So
I think with the incorporation, just know that it's not a done deal. I wish it was an easy thing, but we have a couple of hurdles And we have a person that can say no to us. So we're a little nervous about that. That's going to happen this coming week. And we could use prayer if you pray. We could use your good thoughts if you don't. That's okay. But one of the things that I do want to encourage everyone is if you see something coming in your neighborhood, tackle it early. Don't let it get a foothold, because then you've got a battle on your hands.
And if you live in Texas, call your senator, your state senator, call your state representative, send them emails, call ours, call Senator Birdwell, call Representative Slauson, and tell them you heard about this that's happening in their area of responsibility and that their constituents are suffering, and that they would support any change to the noise ordinance regulation or setback requirements, things that would help the residents that live there. That's what I would say. Call your state rep and your state senator. Call Shelby Slauson, call Senator Birdwell, tell them you heard about it. And, here's an ironic thing is Granbury, just for the third or fourth year in a row, was just voted the best historic small town in the United States.
We're also the celebration capital of Texas.
We're celebrating air pollution.
So that happened. And we, here we are, this whole community of people that live around, we don't live in the city limits of Granbury, but live very close to, in Hood County, that are going through this struggle. And because, like I said earlier, the proximity of gas lines, the proximity of the access to the grid, low property values, it's coming. This isn't the last project that we have in our little precinct.
All right, gang, that's going to wrap things up for us this week. Once again, I want to thank our guests from Granbury, Texas, Cheryl Shadden, Hood County Precinct Chair Dr. Shannon Wolf, and Hood County Commissioner Nanette Samuelson. And I want to thank you all for listening, and I want to thank you for caring. We'll see y'all back here next week for another episode of Working People. And if you can't wait that long, then go explore all the great work that we're doing at the Real News Network, where we do grassroots journalism that lifts up the voices and stories from the front lines of struggle. Sign up for the Real News newsletter so you never miss a story, and help us do more work like this by going to therealnews.com/donate and becoming a supporter today. I promise you, it really makes a difference. I'm Maximilian Alvarez. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Solidarity forever.
When my face you no longer see, I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever we go, we are going to roll the Union on the song. I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever hungry are we. Just as hungry can be. The song, I live on, yes, I live on. Where mean things are happening in this land, it's read a song. I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever the book mean things are happening in this land is read, I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever the videotape of me is shown, I live on, yes, I live on. If I have help to make this a better world to live in, I'll live on, yes, I'll live on. When my body is silent and in some lonesome grave, I live on, yes, I live on. When my songs and poems are read, I live on,